our online event tonight. We've got a great panel who are going to talk to you about what it's like being in Manchester and the surrounding area during the health crisis. They're all activists, either at work or in their community, and we'll talk to us about what it's really like to be dealing with the vulnerable people, and how to organise politically and what we can do. And it is our first opportunity on a Manchester local basis to introduce our new National Secretary, Laura Pidcock. So very welcome, Laura, to Manchester People's Assembly first event since you've been Secretary. We're so pleased to have you as our National Secretary. And I was wondering if you could open up the conversation for us about the National Strategy for the People's Assembly and the things you've learned as we've been going along. Everybody who's watching, if you could share and like the live stream, that would be great, because it will get it out much, much further. So I think without further ado, I'm going to ask Laura to start, and then I'll introduce the panel. Thank you. So Laura.
Brilliant. I like to think of myself, by the way, as an honorary Manc, because like all good honorary people, I spent I think it was just nearly 4 years living in Manchester. I did the student thing of Rusholme, and then moved out to Hume, and absolutely loved it. It's my it's second probably favorite city, but I'm not in Manchester. I'm not in Manchester right now. I am in Durham. So I am a bit of an imposter in this meeting, but hello to everyone at Manchester People's Assembly, and hello to everyone who's just new and wants to watch this to kind of understand a bit more about the People's Assembly, but also is trying to make sense of the crisis. And I don't know about anyone else, but I am starting to feel the effects of the isolation, starting to kind of feel the strain. And I said this at the National People's Assembly meeting, but I would love to give you all a hug. Probably inappropriate, but that's just how I'm feeling right now. So the People's Assembly, for people that don't know, is just an excellent grassroots organisation, and they started trying to make the argument that austerity, so that massive national state-driven policy to cut, and by that I just mean by taking money out of services, take money out of communities, that the People's Assembly, a grouping of those people, said no, that is absolutely wrong. There are other ways to deal with recessions, there are other ways to deal with this global financial crisis. We do not think that it should be working class communities that suffer. We don't think that people who are paying their taxes, who are working harder than ever, longer hours than ever, should actually see their life deteriorate. So the services that they can enjoy deteriorate. Their libraries shut, the school class sizes get bigger, their pay stagnate. And the People's Assembly were at the forefront of making the argument that actually austerity was a political choice. So this was really about the government disagreeing that the state should be providing those kind of services, or that they should be spending as much on schools and health and communities. And so they decided to remove that money to change the nature of what the state does. And actually it's thanks to the People's Assembly and all of the amazing activists who are part of that organisation that you'll see now people accept really that it was a political decision, and the continuation of the cuts was a political decision. And why is that important? Well, it's important because if people don't stand up and organise in their communities, show big displays of national resistance against the government, then nothing really changes. The narrative, the trajectory, the way that people talked about those billions and billions of cuts would have just been that was an economic necessity, so just get on with it, even though we know that it is only the certainly not the richest in society who are having to bear the brunt of those cuts. So the People's Assembly, because of the huge amount of work that they've done, have been a very successful organisation, and they very kindly asked me to be National Secretary of this organisation, something I was very proud to do. And really, we want you to get involved. That's the kind of overriding message. I'm absolutely adamant that we reach out to places that we've never reached out to before, that people think, oh, because I used to think this, and probably other people on the panel, I don't know enough about politics, so I can't get involved. What if people talk to me about what I think on X or Y, and I haven't got like a kind of savvy answer? Will they think I'm rubbish or not intelligent enough? No is the answer. Like, the People's Assembly activists are basically all probably would define themselves on the left, but we are a home for anyone who wants to change their communities, who thinks that there should be an alternative to the way we have to live our lives now. And it operates in two ways. So you've got your local groups, so you've got like your Manchester group. All the people apart from me on the screen are brilliant Manchester people who would welcome you with open arms to do that local activity and to organise at a national level. And of course, because of coronavirus, the People's Assembly focus in the very short term has changed. Why wouldn't it? We are enduring one of the most intense health crises that we've ever faced, and we have to respond to that as activists. And so before this health crisis, we were going to have a Northern Conference and a Southern Conference where activists could get together. That will come, but goodness knows when that will come, because, you know, it is very important that we are not meeting each other at the moment. And we are also thinking about a great march for the NHS. But again, to anyone listening, you know, goodness me, when that does come, it will be big, it will be vibrant, it will be in solidarity with all those amazing people who are on the front line right now dealing with this crisis. And lots of other things. So keep your eyes out on the Manchester People's Assembly page and the national page. And Penny, if you don't mind, I'll just say a couple of things about the current crisis that we are in. So I don't know if anyone else has noticed, and it is hard for activists, and maybe you're tuning in tonight to this because you think, oh, I am uneasy with the government strategy, but I'm a bit scared to say I am because we're having to deal with this crisis in the here and now, and I completely get that. I get that it feels a bit uncomfortable to raise your head above the parapet and say, I'm uncomfortable with X or Y. But I think all of us on this panel tonight would agree that we want the government to do well. We want the government to succeed. It would be counterintuitive not to want them to do well, because this is our loved ones, this is our communities, isn't it? But there have been already a series of catastrophic mistakes, essentially, or deeply troubling decisions made on behalf of the government. And, you know, I'll just mention a few of them. So we know at the start of this journey, when they first became aware, they were pursuing, although it's very, very hard to get to the bottom of, but it was said in press conferences, pursuing a strategy which was about herd immunity. And then there was a huge kind of pushback against that, because, you know, this kind of nonchalance from some quarters that some loved ones will die. Of course, again, everyone on this panel will agree that my life is as equal to somebody who is, say, 90 and currently unwell. You know, that is how precious life is. And so there was a huge pushback against that, wasn't there? So, you know, if you're sitting there thinking, well, what I do doesn't matter, it doesn't change anything, it's just not true. It is only people getting involved and pushing back and saying, we don't agree with this, that ever changes anything. The thing that I'm really worried about, and I would like to be the focus of the People's Assembly, and I would like, you know, people who are watching this to join in calls for this, is to shut down non-essential industry. It is so unbelievable that you can't go and visit your grandma, or like me, I'm separated from other members of my family, quite rightly so, because we don't want to pass a virus around. But you can go and work in a call centre with 300 people on a floor. You know, that seems so counterintuitive. And, you know, I've heard of stories where, because of the key worker status, so if you're working in a call centre, you're covered by the telecommunications key worker status, but you're not doing essential work. So you might be upgrading packages, you might be trying to sell things that aren't essential to dealing with this crisis. So we see people in workplaces where they're not able to socially distance themselves from each other, not got the protective equipment that they need to keep themselves safe. And this must be a priority for working people and activists is to call on the government, please, please, please shut down that non-essential industry now. I think too, we've seen too few ventilators. Where are they sourcing the ventilators from? Why were there so few ventilators? Why have our NHS staff, the key workers, the care workers, not got the protective equipment they need? And I suppose, you know, the final thing that I'd say to kind of sum up, Penny, is this, that it is not the fault of any individual in this country, you know, that whether the strategy goes well or not. Everybody, I believe deeply that everybody is doing their best. Of course, we've seen some displays of people kind of, you know, maybe buying too much or what they don't need, or, you know, maybe people going out and doing more exercise than they need to or whatever. But ultimately, the responsibility lies with the government. They need to issue very, very clear guidance to say, unless your work is going to keep people well and healthy or stop the spread of this virus, your work needs to stop. That we will get the PPE to you, the protective equipment to you, as quickly as possible, and this is how. You know, it seems as though the journalists can't get to grips with, you know, how the PPE is delivered to NHS and other staff. And I think it is a question for all of us, really. I know it feels hard raising these issues when we are in the crisis. I get abuse for it. I'm sure other people get abuse for it. People saying, just get on with it. Just, why can't you just get behind the government? The fact is, we have to bear witness to what is going on here. We have to do every single thing possible to help our neighbours, to help our community, to make sure that we are not spreading this virus ourselves. But there are systemic things that are outside of our immediate control that the government do have control over. And all of us play a part. They do respond to public pressure. We get a feeling when something is going wrong. We know where the gaps are in provision. And our activism is different in this period, but it's very, very necessary. So get involved, like the People's Assembly page. If you haven't, share this stream now, because you're just about to hear from some amazing speakers. And when this is all over, who knows how long that will be, we will gather together again, we will meet each other again, and we will be focusing on the main pressing priorities of the day, making sure that we campaign for that change that we so desperately need. But thanks so much for inviting me tonight, and I'll look forward to listening to the other speakers.
Thank you very much, Laura. That was great. And for all the people watching, well over 200 at the moment, welcome to our event, and thank you, Laura, for that introduction from our National Secretary. And our website, the People's Assembly website, has got loads of resources. If you've still got ink in your computer, you can print out some absolutely amazing posters to put in your window. So the panel we brought together tonight, in addition to Laura, are all the some of the grassroots activists from the People's Assembly who are all involved in one way or another with dealing with this health crisis. So I'll let you know who everybody is first. There's Karen Buckley, who's in Unison and works for the NHS in mental health. There's Liam Smythe, who's the chair of Manchester Momentum and very active in the People's Assembly. Callum Nolan, a Labour councillor in Middleton, and Alison Treacher from the Manchester Social Action Branch, that deals with Union for Charities. So the first speaker I'm going to ask is Karen, if you could just talk for a couple of minutes about, you know, how the health crisis has affected you. I think you've got some tips for us about coping with the crisis. So would you like to start us off with that part of the conversation, Karen?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm a psychological therapist. So I work with clients who suffer from depression and anxiety conditions. So various things, OCD, social anxiety, trauma, all sorts of stuff, really. But I'm also a Unison rep, so I do that a day and a half a week. So I support members across a massive trust. So really, it's just to say that what I'm noticing in my clients, I'm pretty much noticing throughout just everyone I know, really. Everybody's got elevated anxiety, struggling to some extent, you know, because all of us are affected in some way. Nearly all of us know somebody who's got somebody with an underlying condition who is elderly. I, for instance, got a mum that lives in a care home. She's got dementia and emphysema. So, you know, so that's always there as a worry. So I think a lot of us are really struggling. But I think a lot of us have been struggling anyway because of austerity. You know, a lot of people are struggling with really directly because of the living in poor housing. They're trying to exist on benefits, which has been pretty difficult for people, you know, and poor jobs and conditions. And I see all that through my work role, and I see them come through the door as an anxiety or depression and things like that. But I also see people who are probably more wealthy, and they're struggling normally with jobs that tend to be very, very pressurized, and they always want more for less. And so I'm seeing quite a spectrum of people. I know those people at the moment have got increased anxiety, which I think is really normal. You know, I'm pretty much, you know, we've been in a system for a long time that puts profit over people. So we've always, you know, I'm always aware of that as well. But obviously, because we've got this coronavirus and quite a lot of the stuff that Laura said, you know, I think I've seen a lot of clients who are really anxious about this now. Anxious because of relatives like with me, but anxious for lots of reasons, because they've got to go into work, or they've not got a job anymore, or they've got somebody in the family who's going to work, and then they're worried that they'll get it or pass it on to someone else. And so I'm seeing a lot of that. And I think one of the things that bothers me about it is this government's herd immunity strategy. Because if we look at Germany had the same sort of warnings, it had the same, you know, the same concerns as we would have had. But instead of going down the herd immunity, they went down what the World Health Organization was saying to do, which was to do the testing, to the contact tracing, to the isolating. They've also not had 10 years of austerity where their health service has been underfunded. So what we've seen is, you know, that they've actually got a much lower death rate, even though they started quite a lot of people with coronavirus, it's a much lower death rate. And so when I'm hearing things in the papers saying that the, you know, the Tories couldn't have known this, you're thinking, well, they could have, because at the end of January, they were being told that what was coming, we'd seen it in other countries in Asia. So yeah, so my concern was that a lot of my clients now are a lot more anxious, and a lot more people are going to die because of what the Tories have done. So that's been my big concern with it. And I think like Laura was saying, I think we do have to put pressure on the government because of this, because if we hadn't done, it would have been continuing going down that path, and that would have overwhelmed the health service. We would have been a lot more people dying and being infected than already was. So anyway, I think in terms of trying to help, I think if people are feeling really anxious, there's a lot of stuff out there. I actually spoke last week on the People's Assembly National one, where I did give some advice on what to do. You know, in terms of, there's lots of things like making sure that you do get some exercise, do meaningful activity, you know, do speak to people, get referred to the type of service that I work for. There's lots of really brilliant therapists who will be able to help you. You know, there's lots of apps out there that you can use. But one of the things is anxiety is a very, very physical energy, because it's actually coming from a fight and flight reaction. And so it's one of the good things to do is actually do something. You know, if you can feel up to it, do something, because the reason I got involved in the People's Assembly was because of austerity, what we're seeing happening to the health service, because we're seeing more privatisation, I was seeing more underfunding. I was very concerned about what was happening to certain aspects of mental health services that weren't getting funded. And, you know, and doing something in the People's Assembly was really good. It made me feel that I was doing something useful, you know, instead of sat home worrying and getting, you know, really built up about it. And so I'd urge people to get involved in something like the People's Assembly or a campaign, or to do something against this. And I think it is important that we speak out, otherwise we're colluding with people dying. Oh yeah, okay, thank you.
I do this every time, I forget to unmute myself. Karen was referring back to the People's Assembly meeting we had on mental health. So if you do want more detail on, you know, how we're all coping with all this, that is a really good video to go back and watch. And Craig Banks has just commented, anxiety ain't the word. Every time my kids cough, I have a mini panic attack, and I'm normally quite a chilled bloke. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reservations there. So I'm going to ask Liam now, if you could come in. I know you do a lot of work around Fallowfield, Liam. Could you tell us the sorts of things that have been going on, the gaps, you know, and how you've been trying to fill them, Liam?
So My name's Liam Smythe from Manchester Momentum, but I'm also quite prevalent in and around Fallowfield. So at the minute, when this all started, there was a Facebook group called Manchester Coronavirus Support Network, which set up, and everyone was chipping in with sort of like their areas. So there wasn't anything for Fallowfield, there wasn't any provision for Fallowfield. Manchester City Council's initial response was very underwhelming, to say the least. So set up Fallowfield versus Coronavirus, which is on Facebook. And immediately people started to join. For the first few days, I had messages from, because obviously we have such a high student population in Manchester. And I had a lot of students, the parents ringing me, texting me saying, look, one student's presented with symptoms in the household. So that means 5 have got to self-isolate now. These might be symptoms that may be coronavirus, but they may not be coronavirus as well. So without the testing, these people can't find out. So that's 5 people who can't leave the house. And you know what students are probably like? They've probably got a tin of beans and a pot noodle in the cupboard. So, a lot of them don't have any food. So I've been going out to them. Immediately, we set up a Google sheet, and we was harvesting people's data so we could vet people and send them out to where they was needed within the area. And that worked quite well. A lot of the students have gone home now. They're not, I think it's maybe the second day I had it up and running. I got a phone call from someone from a housing association. I won't mention the names. With calls, they was calling me because they had nowhere to go to ring the council to help elderly people in the community who were struggling for food or gas and electric, just simple things because they can't get out because they're self-isolating. That's when it really kicked in. Now, in Fallowfield, we have a library called The Place on Platt Lane. It's very, very good. It was saved from the cuts 2 years ago. And they have a Forever Young club. And I got a message off them and they were saying, we've got 6 or 7 people here, one of them's 90 odd, to get out once a week. That's their freedom, is going to the Forever Young club. They have a coffee, they watch a film. So I got all their details, and I got people to start sending them letters from around Fallowfield, which is very good. And it just picks them up. When I go and see my elderly gentleman who I've got a ring after this call to get his shopping list, he said, I've had 5 letters. I have not, literally, I don't speak to anyone. I go out once a week, and that's my life. So self-isolate is nothing new to me. But he said, it's made me day. I even took him around an Easter egg yesterday, so it's a nice touch for him. So the letters are going out, the shopping, and then, like I say, they're getting calls, these calls from that should be picked up by the council. Now, the issue I've got with the council at the minute, Manchester City Council, is, like I say, their initial response was very slow compared to, say, Salford's. Salford have come along. They had floods 2 years ago. They set up the Spirit Salford network. So they've got a pool of volunteers, and they're all vetted. Some have got CRB checks, some have got different skill sets. They have over 100 people collecting prescriptions for Salford Royal to deliver. Manchester hasn't got that. The telephone line was very late going out. It shuts, I think it's 6 o'clock every evening, which is quite bizarre. And then if you ring up after 6 p.m, you get through to a social worker, and there's one social worker covering the whole of Manchester City Council, and that's not good enough. And that is for the weekend as well. So ultimately, Manchester City Council, in my opinion, is failing. It's fallen to people like me, rightly or wrongly, to help, and I don't mind doing it. But my only anxiety is if I cop for this coronavirus, chances are I might do, because I'm out and about. Who takes my role? I don't have any PPE. So it's just little things like that in the community. We can all chip in, we can all do our bit. But it's heartbreaking, and what gets me is that these people are falling through the gaps, and we're only finding out about them now. So if we hadn't found out about them now, we would have never known. So.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you very much. And if people want to get involved in your project, perhaps you can just send us a link that people could help volunteer for that.
Yeah.
And also very interesting what you were saying about Salford and the floods and that kind of the residue of that, all that community feeling. And I've heard that from other areas that have been flooded that had kind of ready-made network to help each other out. Yeah. Our next speaker is Callum Nolan, a Labour councillor from Middleton. Callum, I know you've been inundated with correspondence from your constituents in your ward. Could you tell us a bit about what they're worried about and how you're tackling it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, can I just welcome Honorary Mancunian Laura Pidcock to cyberspace in Manchester. I look at myself as an honorary North-Easterner because I went to uni up in Sunderland and spent a bit of time up there, not least doing Laura's first campaign video before she was the name that she is now, back in the 2017 election. I think Middleton's your typical working class town. I think it's much like Gorton, where Liam's from, just north in North Manchester. And what's interested me as a kind of frontline local government councillor, but also as a frontline activist as well, is the way that people are struggling to absorb politics at the minute, and the way that working class people struggle to absorb politics in a time like this. I mean, I've been doing bits and bobs around the food bank because we need to look after our food banks at the minute because most of the volunteers there are actually pensioners. So I've been doing bits and bobs around there. That's the only time I can really get out and speak to people physically. But the rest of it's been kind of on social media as it has been for you guys, I'm sure. Because I've always said that the difficulty with engaging working class people in politics is that the minds are always too full up with everyday problems anyway. That's always been the case. You know, council tax bills, work, family and health can be constant areas of stress for the working class. So they just don't have a space in their minds to allow politics in. And politics has been shoved down the necks for the past 5 years. And we're here trying to criticise the government. So for a crisis like this to unfold, which has only amplified those stresses, activists like us who have been pointing out issues with the government's responses are met with claims that we're doing it for political gain. They just won't allow it to absorb in. In my councillor capacity, as you said, Penny, the residents' inquiries have gone through the roof. It started off as the lockdown began with people being scared. They were just scared that they were getting told to go to work. They wasn't sure what was going on with government guidelines. They were getting told to work, as Laura alluded to earlier. The loved ones were getting told to work. These people are working in JD Sports warehouses, construction, stuff like that. And obviously they're frightened to death. You know, it's like 28 days later out there. It is like a Hollywood film that people are living, and I don't think the government's guidance has been anywhere near up to scratch. After that, it was interesting to see the blame culture develop among residents and the general public. Another thing that Laura alluded to before, the people in Middleton started to blame each other as they did across the country. And they were blaming each other because the government comms designed it that way. You know, the guidance started off sketchy. They were asking us to stay indoors a week after the Prime Minister was on morning television banging on about herd immunity. And that not only confused people, but turned them against each other, which was a brilliant tactic, and it worked a treat for him. And then from there, Matt Hancock seems to have done his bit to build this kind of conveyor belt of blame to deflect away from the government shortcomings. But they always seem to be at working class people, or people that working class people love, like footballers, for instance. So, you know, they started off by blaming people for going out to the park and stuff, and then he moved on to footballers, but that backfired because football came out all guns blazing, and even Wayne Rooney wrote an article tearing Matt Hancock a new one. You know, that Wayne Rooney, that famous political commentator. And then more recently, I think the straw that broke the camel's back was suggesting that frontline NHS staff are using too much PPE. Now, frontline NHS staff are working class. You know, we've got nurses, assistant nurses, care workers. I know loads of them, I'm sure you guys do, who are, you know, wiping the backsides of people who have got coronavirus without the right PPE. It's absolutely disgusting. And for Matt Hancock to come out and say that they need to start kind of picking and choosing when they use PPE is just absolutely disgusting. So what I think we've seen from that now is that people have been out clapping at Tuesday at 8 o'clock every week for the NHS. People understand the importance of the NHS. People want to support the NHS. They've gone from not wanting to allow that political space in their minds to blame the government to, hang on a minute, we've got friends who are out there without the right PPE, who are on coronavirus wards, helping these people without the right PPE. And I can smell a little bit of a change in the air, because every single one of these press conferences that, you know, whether it be Priti Patel or Matt Hancock or now Boris Johnson, now is miraculously out of the ICU and looking healthy as anything put to us, I'm smelling a bit more distrust in the air. of the people of Middleton on social media and up and down the country, I do think that it is starting to tip a little bit. And, you know, I'm asking those people now, where do we draw the line? You know, at what point does this shower of shit have to get any worse before the people of Middleton and other working class towns and other people up and down the country stand up and say enough's enough? Where is the line? You know, you've been out there clapping for these people, which is beautiful. And I think for the majority of this crisis is bringing out the best of us. But when are you going to stand shoulder to shoulder with them and demand more from those in power? And I think that's where the People's Assembly comes in now, because we need to start directing them properly. Because I think there's going to be a lot of anger when this is over, and rightly so, and they need somewhere to direct it.
Thank you very much, Callum. That was really, really interesting. And I think the you know, the clapping on Thursday nights, when we do the National People's Assembly meeting, we finish at 5 to 8, so that people can go out and clap for key workers, actually, is what our posters are saying, the NHS and key workers, and try and sloganise. And just on that, Ben Clay's made a comment to remind us that actually, you know, just keeping your social distance, but chatting to a neighbour from the pavement, across the fence, you know, face-to-face contact isn't forbidden. We can still do it. Not everybody's got access to the digital world. So thank you very much for reminding us about that, Ben. Now I'm going to introduce Alison Treacher from Manchester Social Action Branch, and also an activist on Stockport Trades Council. So Alison, could you tell us a bit about what's been coming across your desk and how you've been coping with it, and you know, bring us the news?
Thanks, Penny. Yeah, so as I said, I'm the Secretary of the Greater Manchester Social Action Branch. We represent charity workers across Greater Manchester. I work for a national mental health charity and work across 3 24-hour supported accommodations. I work in social care, and we're really seeing the consequences of years of underfunding, outsourcing, and deprofessionalisation of our sector. Social care workers work in kind of atomised workplaces across the region, and what we need is a united response to this crisis. And it's going to be difficult, but it's going to be absolutely necessary. I'm involved in a Unite shop stewards network of housing workers, advice workers, workers in charities of like Migrant Solidarity, who are all facing like similar issues. We've been dealing with redeployment, furloughing, concerns about sick pay, and concerns about PPE. All the reps across the network have been working really hard to like support their members in their workplace, whilst supporting Unite's campaign to lobby the government around funding for the sector, because the third sector is going to be seeing huge black holes in the money it needs to continue through the crisis, but beyond that too. An example of this is the Sue Ryder hospitals, who have just like announced, you know, something like a 12 million black hole in their funding, because all the charity shops have had to close. Charities and non-for-profit organisations have been doing a great work alongside mutual aid groups here in Levenshulme. We have a community centre called Inspire in the centre of our high street, who have been in a massive hub of activity and working alongside those mutual aid groups. Organisations like this is like a shining light of what, you know, third sector organisations can do during the crisis. And, you know, when they're embedded and in their communities and like meaningful organisations. The main concern I'm hearing for members in social care has been concerns around PPE. Members are concerned that they don't have the right personal protective equipment to do the job safely. There are also reports of PPE kind of turning up to workplaces and it being out of date, which is obviously a concern for our members. Organisations are waiting for a kind of coordinated response to this crisis, but that response from government just hasn't materialised. There was a really good article yesterday from Steve Turner, the Assistant General Secretary of Unite, on Labour List, calling for a Minister of Testing and PPE, because we just want like a crumb of central planning here. And yeah, we want, you know, to bring out, you know, Unite comrades in manufacturing. You know, they're ready to go. They just need to know where that PPE is going, and you know, we need coordination. So with a lack of coordination from kind of central government, you know, this is where communities have like stepped in, and this is like the really important stuff that is going on in our community in Stockport. So in Stockport, a guy called Mark Binks has taken it on himself to set up a GoFundMe page, and he has been producing in his garage on a sleepy kind of Stockport suburban street in his semi-detached house NHS spec visors, face protectors. So I went to see Mark about a week and a half ago, and at that stage he was making about 40 units an hour. So when I collected additional PPE for my colleagues, you know, he was making about 300 units of the face visors a day. Now, a week and a half later, him and a kind of a collective of Stockport producers are now making 10,000 units a day. And they are distributing those crucial face visors to GP surgeries, to social care providers, to hospitals too. Mark's now like grown from Stockport into Manchester, and also there's like new collectives starting in Cheshire and across the northwest. So he's like his innovation and his dedication, you know, is saving lives here in Stockport. So should be a link in the comment section, and so like, you know, this is the stuff that the workers' movement need to be getting behind. Like, bang him a tenner, bang him more if you can. And I suppose the last thing I kind of want to say is just the importance of workers' organisations right now, because Stockport Trades Council, you know, as soon as I collected that PPE, it was like, you know, really kind of emotional. And so like, you know, we got 500 quid to him to increase the capacity of the campaign. But, you know, workers' organisations cannot be furloughed. This is where we need to step up, use our networks, and like, you know, take on the challenges of the crisis. So, you know, with our networks already, you know, we've been phoning up every care home in Stockport, every pharmacy and every GP surgery, using our activists to make sure that PPE is exactly where it needs to be, over the faces of like key workers and working class people.
Thank you so much, Ali. And yes, all the people watching our different Facebook live streams should have posted that link to make those donations. So that's really great. Just a couple of things that's been going on the chat, something about exercise. Let's just be clear that it isn't the People's Assembly that are judging whether people should have enough exercise or not. It's the government sending out mixed messages about, you know, what needs to be done. So if people have the right to go out into open spaces, they live in cramped conditions, and that's what they should be able to do. And then just something else, it was a quick question for Laura. She's just disappeared for the moment. Hopefully she'll be back shortly. So I'll move on to some of the others, just bear with me. Somebody from the RMT would like to raise the issue of the flights from overseas into airports, putting transport workers at risk on tube, taxis, buses and trains with no other checks on passengers. And I think that's something we really would be worried about with key workers. Right, so let's go to some actual questions. There's a very quick one for you, Karen, if you could answer really briefly, from Katie Preen. How do we get referred to and access mental health services during the lockdown? Could you just quickly come back on that?
Yeah, well, my service, which is it's classed as increasing access to psychological therapies, and it just comes as psychological therapies. If you just Google that, psychological therapies in whatever area you're in, Manchester, Trafford, Salford, wherever, it should come up on the internet. And we're classed as key workers, so we're still working. There is a chance we might get redeployed, but we're not being told that at the moment. But at the moment, that, you know, everything, therapy services are going on by telephone, video calls, and so you can ask your GP to refer you, but most places do have a self-referral as well. So.
Thank you very much, Karen. So I'm going to put this question out to the panel. It was couched as a question for Laura. I'm sure she'll be back shortly. 7 o'clock is a terrible time for people with kids to get them to bed and you know, tea and everything. So it's a question about new employees or employees who haven't been at a company for long being excluded from the government's furlough scheme. What's the reasoning for their decision, do you think? Who would like to come in on that one? Callum.
Yeah, I think there's an issue with new employees, and there's also an issue, you know, there's an elephant in the room with the government's furlough scheme and the government's finance package of people who work cash in hand. You know, I think it's got its own stigma, cash in hand, but there's people who work in bars who do this, that, and the other who only earn 40, 50 quid sometimes, small businesses who haven't got anything to prove to the government that they've been earning at all. And obviously, you know, the Tory government, it's all about the economy. It's all about protecting the economy. And I think knowing them lot, they'll be happy to stick the boot into people who haven't got the wage slips or the national insurance payments. You know, they look at them as scumbags, basically. The people who are going to be falling off the edge of this cliff and not getting government help at all when all this is over are working class people. Because some working class people, you know, they can't get a passport or any form of photo ID to even get a job. There's a lot of people that are going to slip through the net here, and I think, you know, the answer to the question, the reason why they're doing it is because they just don't care about those people.
Thank you, Callum. There's a question here. I mean, obviously any of you can take these questions, but I'm guessing, Ali, you might be interested in this one. From Andrea Zabo, I'm a bit worried about vulnerable children and adults, not sure what else to say. Abuse, domestic violence, mental health. What you know, could you offer, Andrea, around that issue?
I don't know what I can offer her apart from I absolutely agree. I'm worried too. I think we're all worried. You know, we see, you know, the increase of domestic violence and, you know, the kind of government's slow response to that. We've also seen increased like mental health problems with those leaving care and the lack of kind of networks that we all rely on at the moment. Yeah, there's a lot of vulnerable people out there. And I suppose that's exactly, as Liam was saying earlier, that's why we need to get involved with, you know, the kind of mutual aid groups and be there for each other. And, you know, Karen alluded to as well, there is like kind of online support, but yeah, I just share that concern. I don't know if I can alleviate any of that anxiety because like we're all living it.
You're absolutely right. And I personally have been sort of very angry at the hypocrisy of the Tories who suddenly have an interest in this, you know, after having cut back so severely the charities that support families suffering from abuse. They now seem very worried about it and almost using it as an excuse to, I feel, to stop the lockdown. Deej Malik Johnson has commented, as Liam says, the people falling between the cracks in council services are really being failed during this. I'm looking after wheelchair using friends with shopping who have to quarantine themselves for 12 weeks. If I wasn't there, they wouldn't eat, and that terrifies me. So I guess the question for the whole panel really, how do you feel about, you know, the 750,000 volunteers that have come forward, the volunteers for Liam that Liam's dealing with and Callum? What should the government be doing about this, and what should local councils be doing? So Liam, yeah, you have to start.
Just unmute myself then. My worry about this is that these people are still going to fall through the gaps. Like I said, there's a chap I deal with, and I lived on the same road for him for 20 years and didn't know he existed till I got a phone call. So if he's not willing, a lot of the time it relies on the people to reach out, not the government to reach in. And a lot of these people, they're very reluctant to ask for help because they're proud people, especially like the older generation. They see, oh, I don't want help, or I've got enough shopping to last me the week. And it comes to the weekend and they've got nothing. So it's up to us as communities to go out there sometimes and reach them. I think that the initiative for volunteers was great, but it doesn't cover everyone, and that's the worry.
Callum, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. I'm muted. Am I muted? Am I on?
You're on, yeah.
Like I was saying before, I think what that 750,000 figure shows is that it is bringing out the best in people in this country. Even though, you know, negatives outweigh the positives, and a lot of people are still looking to the, you know, the panic buying that was going on a few weeks ago and stuff like that. It has brought out the best, and it's made me quite, you know, I've never been a proud Brit or anything like that. I've been brought up, educated on British colonialism too much to be that proud of this country's history. But at the minute, I think it's been pretty cool the way people are dealing with it. And 750,000 people signing up to help the NHS is fantastic. You know, I don't think people can do more for each other. Even when you walk in the streets, yeah, there's this weird 2 metre gap that you've got to keep with people, but there's a nod and a smile. There never used to be a nod and a smile. There was that Mancunian kind of, you know, I'm harder than you when people were walking past you. That's all gone. So I think that's brilliant. In terms of what the government can do for these, what the government can do for these volunteers, just weigh them in afterwards. The money's there. It always has been there. Let's not fall for this kind of economic con that there's no magic money tree and all that bollocks. It's rubbish. The money's always been there. Look after everyone who's got their hands dirty during this crisis. And we need to press for that as the left once all this is over.
Karen, did you want to come in on that? Just unmute yourself.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that there's been lots and lots of people have wanted to volunteer for the NHS, which is really great and stuff. But my concern is that there's a lot of staff that have had to go off on sick, or they've got somebody at home who's got the virus. And these people need to be trained. And so suddenly, when you've massively underfunded, you know, the NHS for so long, and then you suddenly need all these staff. You know, and the other thing is that the Tories, I think it was 4 years ago, had like somebody did this like test of what would we do if we had a pandemic, and the Tory government were told that, you know, we just wouldn't cope. There wouldn't be enough beds, there wouldn't be enough staff, whatever, and they just ignored it. And so yeah, so to bring in loads of staff now when it's actually a crisis point is not really good. We needed to have that already. Like I said, the German model, they didn't underfund their services, and they're in a good position now. So yeah, so I think that's the issue we've got with volunteers, or relying upon volunteers.
Thank you for that, Ken. I'm going to put this comment to the whole panel, if you would, about key workers. We talked earlier on about the RMT and the workers at airports. Paul Martin Hauser said, Matt Rack informed today we have 3,000 firefighters self-isolated due to lack of testing of frontline workers. Years of austerity has reduced this service to a skeleton staff. How does the panel resolve this? Well, you know, you've got broad shoulders, guys. But I guess what Martin is saying, you know, we have seen our services, as you've all pointed out, cut to the bone through austerity, and now they're going down 10, 20, 30% less. What could our response be? And could you talk to us about key workers? Who would like to start us on that? Liam. Unmute.
Yeah, Mary, sorry, just a bit slow. So how would I treat key workers? I'd like to see them funded properly and correctly for a start. Just talk about giving them a medal, and I think Keir Starmer has joined that campaign. Give them a pay rise. It's not hard. Just give them the money that they deserve. In terms of like, and it's a big pressure on people like Candy Burnham this as well within Manchester. He's talking about reducing fire services. The crew size is down. Why? You can't physically do it. It's dangerous and it's not right. So just give them the money they deserve. Treat them with respect. It all comes down to respect at the end of the day. And like I say, we had preparation time for this in January when the World Health Organization said, look, prepare for a pandemic. Boris was sat on a beach in the Bahamas thinking of ways to get Big Bentabong while everyone else was preparing. So, like I say, preparation is key to success. Oh, yeah.
Who'd like to go next?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, just solidarity with all the workers in the fire service. Firstly, what an amazing job they do, and so important. So I suppose, I would say, we need to go to our unions. We need to organise collectively. That's where our power lies, in our communities and in our workplaces. And you know, this crisis has, you know, highlighted. It's like a magnifying glass of all the problems that 10 years of austerity has left us with the social care. It's the same in social care. You know, first went the night workers, you know, then went the cleaners, and you know, we've been chipped away. And you know, social care, everyone thinks that, you know, it's this really well joined up kind of service. However, it's so fragmented. You know, from star workers, personal assistants, recovery workers, healthcare workers, carers. You know, I think that we need to pull together in a kind kind of really have a look at those systems and coordinate a response to that. Of things cannot be the same, things cannot go on the same. We cannot be on the front line on minimum wage, and you know, my colleagues are putting themselves on the line for minimum wage when they have families and responsibilities at home. Things have to change, and we need to, you know, use this crisis to show as a portal to, you know, something better, because we just can't continue like this.
Thank you. Karen, did you want to come in on this, or do you want to
Yeah, I just think that, you know, the key workers, we're now realising who the important workers are, aren't we? You know, and I think that's been the thing for me, is that it's really good that people are starting to recognise that, but we really need this to continue. We can't have it going back to business as usual when it goes back to when things calm down. And I think that's what we need to really campaign for, to keep, you know, keep the pressure on the government that we need to, these workers are really important, and they need the proper pay, the terms and conditions. Lots of them are gig workers, and lots of them are really on very poor contracts as well as very poor pay. So, yeah.
Thank you, Karen. I'm going to ask you to think about, all of you, then, if there was one thing from this event that you could ask, what would you ask the government to do to solve this crisis, or to resolve this crisis? One thing. And also, what could we do? So before you do that, I'm just going to draw everyone's attention to the next People's Assembly event, which is on Thursday night at 7 o'clock, which will be about the media and the media lies. So the only people being allowed to draw the government to account are the press at the moment, and doing a pretty poor job. So that's at 7 o'clock. At 5 to 8 on Thursday, we'll stop the meeting and ask everybody to go out and do not just hand clapping, but we want noise, pans, whistles, shouting, zuzu, anything, you know, just like make loads of noise on Thursday night. And also, I don't know if any of our people monitoring the Facebook pages can do this, but Laura's podcast, the interview with Jeremy Corbyn, is very well worth a listen if you can get a listen in on that. So panel I think Laura did leave us. I wasn't aware where she was having to shoot off. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure she sends everybody her best wishes. So panel, something that the government should do and something that we should do. So Callum, you're going to start us off.
Yeah, I think I don't think there's any better time than now to trial universal basic income. That's the one thing that I think we should ask of the government. While the economy is obviously on its way to its knees, just give everyone a wage. They're even talking about it in America, for God's sake. Just give everyone a wage. You know, we can look at the actual number, but universal basic income. Let's see what it does for the economy. I believe, and many other prominent economists believe that it'll sort us all out. So why not trial it while no one can work? You know, for me, that's a no-brainer. In terms of what we can do, I think, you know, going from the last question about key workers and a solution for them. No, we've not got a solution for them, but I think what we can promise them is, as the People's Assembly and people from the left have been meeting over the past few months in political turmoil in terms of the national picture, with, you know, nothing to fight for in terms of a goal within Parliament. Now there's no election for another 4 years, and, you know, the Labour leadership is where it is. We've all been saying, I can assure you, that it's you guys who we're going to be fighting for over the next few years. And Karen alluded to it before. We're not going to let it die down. The people who are working in, you know, your Tesco's and your Aldi's, your other grocery shops, your NHS workers, your caregivers, everyone who's classed as a key worker, everyone who's grafted through this, the left is going to be on your side after this. We will not let the government forget about you. That this is what we're here for now. This is why the left's here. So we won't be forgetting you. And I think that's one thing that the left can assure people, that we'll be fighting for you as soon as all this is over, as we are doing now.
Thank you, Callum. Liam.
Yeah, so what I would say to the government is just listen to the proper science, not your own science, be two cronies and the eugenics of Mr. Cummings, who hasn't been seen since he ran out of Parliament, and test, as we always say. And I think to add to that, to trace as well. Yeah. Because South Korea and Germany have got this policy of testing you and aggressively tracing the virus. In terms of what we can do, my key goal at the minute is just to keep, the community stuff, keep getting people involved. And also, like Callum said, I think a universal basic income is needed. I've been laid off. I'm on £293 universal credit I got last month. I missed the increase by 2 days. It's just not enough to live on. Do you know what I mean? It'd make all that difference. I'm lucky I live with people who care about me. Not everybody's like that, so yeah.
Thank you, Callum. I'm going to come to you, Ali, if I can, next.
Yeah, so like my demand of the government is sort PPE out, speak with the unions, let's start like coordinating a response so those on the front line actually have the right equipment to do the job that they're there to do. So, and I think that has to happen yesterday. So hopefully, you know, the call from Steve Turner to get testing and PPE minister, someone accountable, someone we can hold to account as soon as possible, that would be great. And I really agree with a lot of what Callum said around, you know, our kind of actions moving forward. Like key workers, working class people have got to be, you know, saying things have got to change. I'd like to see a kind of Fight for 15 campaign. We saw it happen in America. You know, I'd like to see, instead of us going out on a minimum wage or even a real living wage, we don't just want to live anymore. Like, you know, we just survive. You know, we want to, you know, thrive. And so, you know, a Fight for 15 campaign would be something that I'd back anyway.
Thank you very much, Ali. Karen, I'll come to you.
So I think the immediate concern is obviously to look at what countries have been doing this well. I know I keep mentioning Germany, but we need to go to them because people need to have a proper strategy that is going to work. We need to get people behind this in a good way, you know, to really get over this. But I think what we can do, I think that we can't leave it to the government. We need to be all part of the solution. And I think what we need to do is join unions, because the union movement has really decreased over the years since Thatcher. Unions can help all these people that are key workers, that are in these poorly paid jobs with poor conditions, need to join a union because together we're strong. On our own, it's like, what can I do? But when you're part of a collective, we're much stronger. And that's things like the People's Assembly, and to build up the labour movement in the wider sense, you know, so that we can fight back. Because again, like I said, together we're strong, and we can do that because we can't wait for the Tory government to do that for us. We have to fight for it.
Thank you very much, and thank you much, all the panel. And I hope everybody who's been watching has found some useful takeaways, because we always say at the People's Assembly, we love to analyse the situation and talk about politics, but we always finish our meetings with some actions. So as Ben Clay said, talk to your neighbours at a safe distance. We've got posters on our website. You can print them out, put them in your window, or when you're going to the shops, maybe on a few lampposts or railings on the way. And tune in again next Thursday for the national event of the People's Assembly. So thank you so much for everybody, and we could give you a big virtual clap, we would, but thank you very much, panel. Thank you. Bye-bye.